Hello everybody, welcome to another fantastically produced video that's going to be A+ quality content. Today I wanted to talk about one of the teams that really surprised me the most, not in terms of just their mechanics, which was pretty surprising, you know, Baby Bay popping off, and that kind of gives it away though. It's going to be San Francisco Shock. Now, I wanted to talk about not just why they surprised me, but, you know, really go a little bit more in depth of you know, exactly what they did and how they did it and what maybe could be refined down a little bit more, because I think they had a really cool or a very cool strategy on Temple of Anubis on offense for point A. So if we jump into this little graphic I've got up here, this is like the precursor to what exactly happens here. So this is the default setup for most teams when it comes to defending point A. It's about a 60-40 in favor, or not in favor, I should say, of having a widow. I think more teams on defense usually are banking on not having a widow, but that could change based on a lot of things. We have seen teams in Korea. I think there was an X6 Gaming versus Runaway. I think that they really favored having Widow on the high ground here on defense. Sometimes it's paired with Orisa, sometimes it's not. Sometimes, again, like, you just don't run the Widow. But for this game, it is going to be a Widow duel, or a lack thereof, I should say. Because what ends up happening is San Francisco has this very creative way of using their aggressive support, Dak on Lucio. Basically, the formation they're going to go ahead with is they're going to send Nevix, Nomi, and IDDQD along with Dak around the backside to kind of pick off Tavik because he's off on his lonesome. What happens when you do that, when you have 4 players lined up over here? Granted, these aren't exactly the positions that they would hold, but this just serves as a representation of, you know, where the enemy team is, or where your allies would be. So in that case, we have a lot of your resources dedicated to taking out Tavik and taking this high ground, which is smart, which is really intelligent, because the way that they do that is they come through main, they get Dak on top of this platform, and then he goes up and around. Or they go through the left, they control this mega health pack, and then they go up and around. Either way, you're getting a lot of speed boost. You're taking all of your mobile heroes and sending them to deal with Tavik, not only to deal with Tavik, but also to capture the high ground, which is really, really important. The problem with that is it leaves your Widow and your Mercy open, and Logix takes complete advantage of that in a clip that we'll jump to here in a moment. But I just wanted to set the framework that they send 4 to deal with Tavik and the high ground, and then usually they end up getting collapsed on, which is unfortunate, but I wanted to kind of just set the framework, set the tone. So here we have San Francisco attacking point A on offense with the composition. This is basically from the game that I just showed you, setting up the framework. We are going to have Dak coming up, but unfortunately Baby Bay gets picked off by Tavik. I think the strategy here is to let the 4 players, so you have Dak, you have Nevix, you have Nomi, and you have IDDQD, flank and pressure the point, not only the point, but Tavik, so that Baby Bay can come out and take a cheeky pick and really control the high ground without having any pressure put on him. So he gets picked off, which kind of kills the push entirely before it even begins. But in this clip, you start to see exactly what they're trying to do with Dak. They want to put him on the offense. He's really mechanically gifted, and the push kind of falls flat a little bit. But if we skip ahead, we start to see it kind of flesh itself out. Here we have Dak going up again, and they execute really, really nicely onto Tavik, and they get the pick. But remember how I was talking about with Logix coming behind and really picking off Widow and Mercy, because they're off on their own. They don't have any peel to kind of relieve any pressure that Florida would be able to put on them. So Logix gets in, and he gets a double because there it is. Okay. So he gets a double there because there's no defensive options that they have to really fall back on. They're just basically taking aim duels at that sense. The really cool and interesting thing here is what San Francisco does after the fact of the push kind of succeeding, but not in the way that they really needed it to succeed. So what ends up happening is they send Nomi and IDDQD immediately after this pick on Tavik. Let's go back. Let's find Tavik. Where are you, buddy? There he is. So they get the pick onto Tavik. Right here. They pick Tavik here. But they get the call that the double kill, or the Logix goes in the back line, gets the double kill, and they kind of call for a reset. But they don't hard reset. They actually go for kind of this chaotic, interesting play where they go to actually force Tavik. Either they're not forcing Tavik to do anything, they actually just go pressure Tavik off of spawn. So here in a second, we'll start to see, yeah, there we are. So Tavik actually gets picked off right after spawn again, which draws Mayhem off the point into this kind of scrappy mid point A, point B fight, which San Francisco ends up taking to their advantage. Nobi gets some beautiful plays here. They force out a reset on the Diva. Always a great trade. I think you take those all day of the week, and they just kind of snowball the point. Here we're going to look at what ends up happening with the London Spitfires. The London Spitfires actually throw an interesting kind of spin on the same strategy that Florida tried to do with having the Widow take a duel with the offensive Widow, but they have the defensive option of holding with Orisa. And they don't actually hold on the high ground, they actually hold on the platform for most of the game, but they start on the high ground. And there again, we are going to see them rotate around in this default execute that they kind of, it seemed to be something that they've practiced quite a bit, and they seem to be quite fond of running it. Granted, they only played it in 2 matches because we only saw them play 2 rounds of Temple of Anubis. But it was interesting because I've never really seen anybody approach using Lucio in this sense, because we see... You'll start to see, before this happens, I'll just kind of show you where to look for. You're going to see Dahak kind of come around this way and come up to this little spot up here. And he's going to try and boop the Mercy and anybody he can catch off and down on the control point. So here we have the normal setup from the in-game kind of third-person cam to show exactly what... and how San Francisco wants to operate this against this interesting little defensive setup from London. So you're going to see Dahak here. He's skating up and around to come down and flank the high ground setup that London has. But again, they don't only send him, they send Nevix and Nomi. The problem with this is, again, if London did have... let's say Rascal or maybe a Tracer player, maybe they're running, instead of Bird Ring, let's say they ran Tracer. The backline of San Francisco is kind of a little bit vulnerable in this sense because they don't have any defensive options again, but it seems like Rascal is kind of just floating around trying to get a nice angle on the bulk of the San Francisco front line. And if we play the clip, it is a little difficult for them to approach the high ground here because they can't displace much of anybody. And that's where the crux of the strategy seems to kind of falter a little bit, because Lucio needs to get up and get around and displace people off of the high ground, and then San Francisco can collapse. But if he doesn't get that, then I'm not entirely too sure how this strategy works. That there again, backing up a little bit, if you know, if London catches wind of this and they know this strategy, they've done their homework, they know that they like sending Dak and Nevix on the backside, and that kind of shows us, I mean, this image right here shows a great separation of where San Francisco is at all times. So you got 2 people here, you got 1 person over yonder, and then you got 2 people coming around the backside. So they can take they can take any kind of pick they want. If they want to take the Lucio and the Diva, they can go back and take the Mercy and the Widow. If you just move as a unit and you just take numbers and advantage. Granted, you know, aim is a thing in this game, obviously, but statistically, right, you should be able to take the fight with numbers advantage, or maybe even having an ultimate advantage if you take those into account. And that's where I wonder exactly where this strategy goes from next, especially with when approached with an odd setup like this that we haven't really seen before. We've seen the Orisa with the Widow, but most of the time the rest of the defending team tends to position around here or even around the high ground on this this backside over here. The Lucio play that San Francisco has shown has been really interesting. I think that they have some really cool and innovative trickery when it comes to how they like to use Dak and his aggressive tendencies. And I'm really interested and excited to see what else they have in store for us. Just to double back on the composition itself. Even in this position, I feel like if you could get Baby Bay on like a Pharah, while also pressuring with Dak and Nevix on the offside, I think that would be really interesting. Once you come around with Dak and Nevix, it'd be kind of interesting to see a Pharah pop up and try to displace the high ground with a concussion, to aid with the displacement with a concussion grenade or a you know, just some really nice rockets, because London really doesn't have a great composition to deal with Pharah. Obviously, you know, having a Widow and a Zen definitely isn't what you want to run Pharah into. But if you coordinate in a way that it seems like San Francisco is trying to do, in terms of applying pressure from one angle and then taking a very safe peek from another angle, I think that would be an interesting take on the strategy, because I don't know how Widow breaks this without having to reposition on this high ground to our left. But there again, I think it was some really interesting strategy approached by everybody at the San Francisco coaching staff, Legit and Harsha with Brad. I think they've all been doing a really good job, and I'm really interested to see how and what next they do with Dak and Lucio. So until next game, I'll see you guys later.